Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. So today what I want to do is I just want to continue the project that I started in my previous video. So the game start project. Today I just want to add a new requirement. So um, you know, before what we did was we created an API to receive the image, and then after we've received the image, we process the image. So here's where we do the processing, and after we are done, we store it onto the VPS. Okay, so let me take you to the drawing board so that I try to explain what is happening. Here on our drawing board, this is how the old implementation looked like. So we have our server, and then let's say VPS, right? So and then we have the client. So this is the client. So a request is made from the client to the server, and then it is in the form of multi-part, right? So we add the image to the request, and after the server receives the image, some processing is done, and after that, the image is stored on the storage of that server. Okay, so in here we can have storage. This is not looking good, so let's storage. Let's move this one a bit. So yeah, so the storage is on the server. So this is the old implementation. Now with the new implementation, what we want to do is instead of storing the image on the server, we want to send the image across the internet to AWS. Okay, so AWS S3. That's what we want to do for the new implementation. So this is also going to be very simple. Okay, so it is nothing scary. It is just a simple change. So the request goes from the server to AWS, and then we get a response from AWS. Just some few details about the image, and then we use it basically. So let's get back to the code and then let's start implementing this. Now back to our code. What I want to do is I want to create a new folder. I'm going to call it lib. Okay, so that is what we have here. Okay, it is an empty folder basically. So if you don't have this one, just create it. And then I'm going to add a new file. I'll just call that one s3.js. Okay, so this is going to hold the code, the functions that we need for AWS S3. Okay, so whatever function we are going to need to upload the image to AWS, this is where we're going to keep it. We're going to keep it in the lib folder under the s3.js. After we have created this file, now we have to install the necessary dependencies. Okay, so we can do npm I, and then we say AWS SDK. Not only that, we're also going to need .env. Okay, so that is the package that is going to allow us to configure the env, basically the environment, right? The environment variables. So let's say .env. I don't think we're going to need any other package, so let's just install these ones for now. So it is installing. Okay, so it is done installing. Now we just have to confirm that. So we have two new packages added, .env and then AWS SDK. Now let us make use of the AWS SDK. So in here we have to first create AWS, right? So what we actually need is an instance the of the S3 class. Okay, so in this case we just say AWS SDK, and then we can say const, and then we call this one S3. Okay, so this is going to be the instance of it, and we are going to say AWS dot S3. So remember the capital one, so dot S3. Okay, so this is, and then because it is a class and then we want an object, we just add a new to it. Now this is going to give us an instance of the S3 class, which is an S3 objects code-wise, right? So S3 dot. Now we can see the various functions that we have here. So we have create buckets and so on. Okay, so we've done this. Now we can create our function. So we can call it exports dot, and then we say upload file to S3. And then this is going to be an async function. Okay. And we'll get back to the parameters later. Now that we have this, we have to configure AWS S3. I'm sorry, we have to configure AWS. So in order to do that, we just have to create a new file here. We're going to call that one .env. Okay. .env. And then we are going to paste the env variables that we need. So I've pasted the env variables I'm going to need. In this case, they are going to be AWS access key ID and then AWS secret access key. Okay, so you also do the same on your system. Now, after saving, we have to make use of these variables. So I'm going to paste my access key ID here, and then I'm going to paste my AWS secret access key. So these things, you can get them from your AWS dashboard or the AWS portal, or console actually. And then after that is done, we have to come in here. So let's say right after console.clear, we have to initialize the .env package. If you're using Node version 20 and above, I believe, I don't think you need .env. I think everything is already baked into Node. But in my case, I'm using Node 18. That's why I'm doing this. So I can just do require, and then we would say .env, and then we are going to call the config function. So this is going to configure .env. So anytime we run the code, it is going to make use of the values that we pass in the environment variables. So I've gone ahead to add my secrets to the .env file here. So you do the same. I just don't want to show it, but I have done that. Now I want us to make use of the S3 objects we have here. So S3 dot, we can say upload. In our case, I want to use the promise version. So the promise, and then because we are using promise, we can just do await, right? Now, when you look at the signature here of this function, we have params and then we have callback. So if you are not using the promise version, the callback will be important. So let's say you have let's say an object here which will hold the params, and then you have like a callback function. So that one has error, and then it also has data. So you have something like this. Then if there is an error, right, you do the necessary stuff. If there is data, you do what is necessary. In our case, we don't need that because we are using the promise version. And because we are using the promise version, what we can do is we can do a try catch. So I'm going to just move this code. I'm going to move this code into the try block. Yep, we have it here. And I'll call it S3 data. And if it is successful, I just return S3 data. So there'll be a const here. I've been writing in Python recently. And then if there's an error, you choose what to do to the error. But in our case, I just want to log it to the console. So error. And then if you want to print the stack, it's up to you. But in production, you probably wouldn't do this. Okay. In production, you wouldn't log to the console. You probably maybe send it across some kind of login, um, a place where you hold your logs or you keep your logs, or you can even export it somehow. But in our case, we just want to show it in the console. So this is looking good. This is looking good. Okay, now the other thing we have to do is to define the params object. So we can call that one params const, and then with the params, right, it takes bucket. So it has bucket. So that is the name of the bucket. And then we have the key. The key is going to be the name of the file. Okay, so the name you want to give to the file. And then it has so bucket key, and then it has, I think, content type. So content type, and then it has body. Okay, so body. So we're going to pass params to this. Now for the bucket name, I can create a function, a variable here. So I'll just say const, and then I'll call down bucket name, and I'll assign it to the name of my bucket. So that one I'll just copy it from the AWS console, and then I'll paste it here shortly. I'll just put it here as bucket name, and then for the key, and then body, and then content type, we're going to pass them as, we are going to use them as parameters. Okay, so for the bucket, for the key, we just call it file name, and then for the body, we'll call it file buffer, and then for content type, let's just call it MIME type. So we'll pass MIME type to this. For the body, we are going to pass file buffer, and then for the key, we are going to pass file name. This is looking good so far. I'm going to quickly paste the bucket name here. Okay, so I just copied this one from AWS console. So this, you have to do the same thing. You have to get a bucket name and then paste it in here. So we have AWS SDK Node tutorials. That's the name of my bucket. Now that I have this set up, I can come to my games controller, and then I want to do a couple of things. Now, before we're saving the process file, we're saving it to the disk, right? That's why we are calling to file and then to file here. So one is for the image after we resize it and then we reduce the quality a bit, and then the other one is for generating the thumbnails. In this case, what I want to do is I want to also provide a path for a path or a file name for the thumbnails. Okay, so file path, let's say thumbnails. So that will be where we are going to store it on AWS. Okay, so slash thumbnails slash file name, and then we'll keep the original file inside. We'll keep the processed original file right inside file path. While the thumbnails will go to images slash thumbnails. And the next thing we want to do is, instead of storing it to the disk, we want to do to buffer. So to buffer means we are passing it to memory. Okay, so we are going to hold the processed image in memory on the RAM. We are not going to save it on the disk. So because we are holding it in memory, we can assign it to a variable. We'll call it, let's say, file, or let's say image buffer. Image buffer const const image buffer, and then we'll do the same thing for, let's say, const thumbnail buffer. Thumbnail buffer. Yeah, I think this is good. So we change this one to buffer. Okay, so we have our image buffer, we have our thumbnail buffer. Now what we want to do next is to call the function we have created. So we just have to import that into the controller. So we can say const, and then we can call it S3, and then we can say require. Then we have so we kept it in lib, and then S3. Then just after this one we can say let's say I'm just thinking about how. Okay, let's say const S3 data, and then we are going to do S3 dot upload file to S3. That's the function we created, and then you can see that we have the file name as the first parameter, we have file buffer as the second, and then MIME type as the third. In our case, file name is going to be file path, so that one, and then for the file buffer we are going to use image buffer. Then the MIME type, we can get that one from request, so request dot file dot, and then we are going to say MIME type. If you are confused, you can just watch the previous video. You see why I'm doing this, because I've already explained what is happening here. And then we may use or we may not use this. Okay. Okay, for now let me just do await. So await, and then await. Okay. Okay, so it is about time we test this. Now this S3 data that I get from uploading the image to the server, I just want to S3. I just want to log it so that you see what we get as response. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do log, and then I'll say S3 data. So this is going to be the response that AWS sends us. Now let us run this. Okay, node server. Okay, so this is running the server on port 3000. Now we are getting this note. So basically it is for migration of the SDK from version 2 to version 3. Don't worry about this. You can just follow the documentation they've provided. You are going to see how to do that. I think there's a tool for that, but it's nothing major for now. But yeah, so basically everything is okay. So I'm going to test this one. I'm running the server on port 3000. I'm going to open Postman, and then we do the test. So here in Postman, we have our various endpoints. I'm interested in create game. So we are going to create a game. Now for the image, I'm going to select an image. So I have selected the image. So I have it here. I did not show the window, but yeah, I did select it. And then I'm going to send this request now. Okay, so the request has been sent successfully. It took longer than usual. That is because it has to upload the image to AWS, right? Now let's go back to the code. Now here in the code, what I did was I selected an image. So if you look at the starter files, I have this image called Melo. So this is the image that I selected and then I uploaded through Postman. Now if we go back to the games controller, um, and then we also check the terminal, we get to see this this object. Okay, now this is the object we are logging. So that is S3 data, and then we are getting this field called location. Now location is the URL for the file we just uploaded. Okay, so whatever we uploaded using the upload file to S3, that is the location of that file. It is a URL, so you can access it from the internet, but we'll get to that one in a bit. So after we get that data, we just log it to the console. That is what we see over here. It also includes the bucket name. Also, when you look at the structure of the URL, you can see the name of our bucket, right, with AWS domain and then the path. So in this case, we specify the path images. So we have images slash and then the actual name of the file. In the original implementation, we stored the image on the disk and then we referenced the file. We referenced the path to that file. In this case, because we are sending the image to AWS and then AWS is giving us a location, we use that location instead of the location we would have kept on the file. Okay, the location at which we will store the image on the file. So in this case, we can just say S3 data dot, and then you can see we have bucket name e. Basically, the things that we have over here, the key ones. So we just select location. So this is going to put location on the image field that we have over here, and then we are going to return that inside the response for the user. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, so if you have any question, just you can put in a comment. And then the other thing was just in case you are confused, don't worry, you can find more information about what is happening here in the previous tutorial. Okay, so this is looking good. Let us cancel this and then start a server again. Because I've made changes here, I just want to start a server again so that the changes will reflect. So now let us go back to Postman. Now back in Postman, I just want to make the same request again. So it is not necessary, but I just want to go ahead and then I'm going to choose a new image. So I've selected the same image again. I've sent this request. Okay, now if we check the image path, right? Now this one is giving us the image, the path to the image. You can see the URL, right? Just like we specified in code. So that is what we have over here. You can open this in your browser or you can open it in Postman. Let's try to open it in Postman. If we send this request, access denied. That's the response we are getting. Okay, forbidden. So I'm going to show you how to make any object that you have on your S3 storage, how you can make it public. Okay, so that the public can access it. Anybody on the internet can access it. So that is what I'm going to show you right now. Here in the console, if we go to S3, yeah, now we can see the buckets. But in case you don't see the buckets first, you can click on buckets and then yeah, you should be able to see your bucket. In my case, I have just one bucket called AWS SDK No Tutorials. If I click on that, if you remember what I showed you before, we only had three images, three files here, right? And then they were all images, so flower, plants, and then sample text. Now we have a fourth item or object inside the bucket, and that is called images. If you also look at the type of it. The type is a folder. Now, the reason why we are getting this is because of how we defined it inside our Node application. When you remember the file path, we did images slash, right? So images slash, then the name of the file for the original image, and then for the thumbnails, we are like images slash thumbnails, and then the name of the image. So if you go to images, we can see two items in here, right? Um, That's because we did a request twice. However, I was expecting another folder for the thumbnails, but that is not showing over here. So we'll just go back and check the reason why. But first, let us address something here. So if you click on any of the objects or the images, you can see this URL, right? We can copy this and then we enter. The moment we do this, we get this error, access denied. This is the same error that we are getting in Postman, right? So this is the URL of the image. Therefore, if anyone has it, if anyone has this URL, the person should be able to see the image across the internet. That is, if we have permitted them to do so. Now, how do you give permission, or how do you grant access to the images that you've kept in your bucket, or to the files that you've kept in your bucket? So this is not just only images, it can be any file at all. Okay, so you just have to go back to your bucket. So this is my bucket, AWS SDK no tutorial, and then I can go to permissions. Now if you look at what we have here, we have a certain I can maybe policy, you should say, maybe. So basically what happens is it is blocking access to all, it is blocking like public access to all the items we have in our bucket. So we can just go to edit and then we click that to unblock. If you have any specific reasons, or if you have any specific restrictions or anything, you can take what is necessary here. And then you just have to click on save and then you type confirm. Okay, so confirm. Now successfully edited. If we refresh this again, nothing happens, right? If you can press enter, nothing happens. Still the same. Now why is this so? It's because we have not defined a policy. So we have to go ahead and then define a policy. Now you can go to bucket policy here and then you click on edit. And then we have edit statements, so you can add a new statement. Basically, this is going to help us to build a policy. So we first have to choose a service or a resource, right? So we can say S3, and then the action we need. So we can say get object. So I'll just take that one. So you can see that as we click, it begins to build it out, right? Now for the SID, it is optional, okay? And then for the principal, so basically it's like the user, right? You can use asterisk. So basically everything, anything at all, like, and everything should be able to get the object. Okay, so the effects, yes, we want to allow it. And if we go to resource, we can add a resource. In our case, we just have to choose object and then the bucket name. We are going to use the name of our bucket. So I just copied that one from the URL. And then remember to remove the curly brackets and the path. So the path to the object name. In our case, we wanted to access every object inside the bucket, right? So we can just use asterisk again and then add. Now that we have done that, we can just save the changes. I don't know if it is going to take some time, but let us just quickly refresh. Nice. So you see, after I refresh, now we can see the image. So anyone with this URL, okay, provided I have configured it that they can, provided I've configured it such that public access is allowed, that person can receive this image. So that is how you build apps, right? So you send the image to the backend, or to your, let me just make it simple. So you send the image to maybe S3, and then the server returns the ID. Okay, even the ID can save it in database, whatever it is, right? You can save it wherever. So we save this we save this URL, and the front end or the front end application can be a mobile application or web application. That web application or that mobile application is going to use the URL to show the user the image, okay, based on whatever action they are performing on the website or the mobile app. So that is how you build it. It's very simple. So we have our buckets, we have the items in there, we've given public access. Very simple. Now we can go back to the code and then try to find out what is happening with the thumbnails. Okay, back to the code. Just checking out what is happening with the thumbnails. So upon second look, I noticed that we are not using this one. We are not using the thumbnails variable. So I assume we are doing this twice, right? So we are calling this function twice, the first time and then the second time with the same value. So it is probably overriding it. That is what is happening. So in the third, in this, on this third try, what I want to do is instead of file path, I just want to do, that is why copy and paste is not good. I just want to do file path thumbnails, right? I think that's what we called it. So clearly that's what we called it. So file path thumbnails. And then instead of image buffer, we are going to use um, thumbnail buffer. Thumbnail buffer. And then yeah, the MIME type will still be the same, right? Because it is an image. We can save this and then we can make the request in Postman. But before that, we have to restart the server. So okay. All right. So I have made a request in Postman behind the scene. Now let us go to our AWS console to see if the thumbnail has been created or if the thumbnail has been uploaded. Okay, so we are in the console. Let's go back to buckets and then back to our bucket and then in oh yeah. I thought yeah, it not show before, right? So after I refresh, we can see a new folder called thumbnails, and then we can see the third image coming through. So so this is the thumbnail. Now let us click on this one and then open it in a tab. So I've opened this. Now you can see that's the thumbnail that we got from this image. So that is it. Thank you for watching the video. Anyone who has liked my previous videos, thank you guys a lot. There were other comments that came through. I enjoyed reading everything. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for your support. Have a good one.